The Frozen Reckoning. The Petrified Forest earned its name through centuries of cruelty. Trees stood frozen mid-sway, their leaves eternal and gray. Animals, caught mid-leap, decorated the twilight paths like grotesque sculptures, their stone eyes forever wide with final terror. Alpha Dimitri's reconnaissance team moved carefully through the cursed land. One wrong step, one moment of weakness, and the forest would claim them too, turning flesh to granite in a single heartbeat. They weren't supposed to find anyone alive here. Nothing lived in the Petrified Forest. That was the entire point of banishment, a death sentence disguised as exile, letting nature do what the pack's laws couldn't stomach doing directly. But there, in a clearing where pale moonlight somehow broke through the stone canopy, stood three statues that stopped Dimitri's heart and shattered his world completely. A woman crouched low, arms spread wide in a protective stance so fierce it transcended stone. Her face was frozen in desperate maternal determination, every detail preserved with haunting perfection. The sharp curve of her jaw, the love blazing in her stone eyes, the way her dark hair whipped around her shoulders as if caught mid-wind. Sarah, his mate, his condemned, banished, supposedly dead mate. And beneath her outstretched arms, shielded by her petrified body like precious treasures, were two small boys, perhaps 3 years old, their stone faces peaceful in eternal sleep. They had Dimitri's strong bone structure and Sarah's delicate features, an impossible blend that proclaimed their parentage louder than any declaration. His sons. Sons he never knew existed, protected even in death by the mate he'd sentenced to die. Dimitri fell to his knees on the hard stone ground. The impact sent pain shooting through his legs, but he barely felt it. 3 years ago, he'd stood before the pack council and condemned his pregnant mate for treason, choosing pack loyalty over her desperate pleas of innocence. He'd watched her stumble into this cursed forest, one hand on her swollen belly, refusing to beg anymore because his judgment had already destroyed her. She'd been innocent, she'd been carrying twins, and he'd killed them all. His second in command, Owen, stepped forward cautiously. "Alpha, we should—" His voice cut off sharply as he saw what had broken his leader. "Moon above, is that Lady Sarah?" Dimitri couldn't speak. His throat had closed completely, choked by 3 years of suppressed guilt now erupting like a volcano. He reached out with shaking hands and touched Sarah's stone face, tracing the curve of her cheek with trembling fingers. The stone was warm. Warmer than it should be after years of abandonment. "They're not cold," Dimitri whispered, his voice cracking. "Owen, they're not cold like the other statues." Owen knelt beside the figures, his weathered face creased with confusion and growing horror. His palm pressed against the nearest boy's small shoulder, and his eyes widened. "Alpha, this isn't right. Stone doesn't hold warmth like this. Unless—" He looked up sharply, hope and dread warring in his expression. "Unless they're not completely gone. The curse? It preserves, doesn't it? Traps them between moments?" Dimitri's hands moved frantically now, checking both boys, then returning to Sarah. Every stone surface radiated that impossible warmth, that hint of life suspended rather than extinguished. "We need to get them out of here, carefully. If they shatter, we lose any chance of bringing them back," Owen finished grimly. He gestured to the other warriors, who approached with expressions of shock and growing understanding. Their alpha had condemned his own family, and now that family might still be savable. The extraction took hours. They wrapped each statue in furs and secured them to specially constructed sleds, moving with the delicacy of men handling newborns. Every crack of a branch, every shift of weight made Dimitri's heart stop. One wrong move and the stone could fracture, could shatter, could turn his family from suspended to truly dead. As they worked, Dimitri couldn't stop staring at his sons' faces. They looked peaceful, like children sleeping after a long day of play. What had Sarah named them? Had she given birth alone in this cursed place, with no one to help her, no one to celebrate their arrival? Had she held them, nursed them, raised them in the shadow of death for however long they'd survived before the curse took them? The questions tortured him more than any physical pain could. When they finally began the careful journey back to Shadow Moon territory, Dmitri walked beside Sarah's sled, one hand never leaving the stone that had once been her living, breathing body. In his mind, he saw her 3 years ago, standing before the council with evidence of treason piled against her. Letters allegedly proving she'd conspired with the Bloodfang pack, the same pack that had attacked their territory and killed 17 wolves in a coordinated strike. He remembered her defense, her voice steady despite the terror in her eyes. "I was investigating them, not helping them. Someone is feeding them our patrol schedules. I was gathering proof when the attack happened. You have to believe me." He remembered the evidence. Her handwriting, or what looked like her handwriting. Correspondence detailing pack movements. Witness testimony from wolves he'd trusted, claiming they'd seen her meeting with Bloodfang scouts in secret. And he remembered his choice. The pack had demanded justice. The evidence seemed overwhelming. And he'd been so afraid of appearing weak, afraid of choosing love over duty, afraid of what it would mean if he trusted his mate over the word of his most loyal wolves. So he'd condemned her, watched her walk into the Petrified Forest with their unborn children growing in her belly, and told himself he'd made the only choice a true alpha could make. Now, walking beside her stone form with his unknown sons nearby, Dmitri understood the truth with crushing clarity. He'd made the wrong choice. He'd murdered his own family because he'd been too proud, too afraid, too concerned with his reputation to fight for the woman who'd needed him most. The guilt didn't just crush him, it petrified his heart more thoroughly than any curse ever could. They reached Shadow Moon territory at dawn, the 3 statues secured and intact. Word had spread ahead through runners, and half the pack waited at the gates, their faces a mixture of shock, judgment, and confused sympathy. Whispers followed Dmitri as he personally supervised moving the statues to the most secure chamber in the Alpha's complex. Is it true? The traitor lives? Those are his children? He has sons? Ghost-cursed, probably. Look how pale the stone is. He condemned his own mate, his own babies. Dmitri heard every word and welcomed the judgment. He deserved far worse than whispers. The chamber he chose had been his father's meditation room before his death. A circular space with high windows that let in natural light and walls thick enough to withstand siege. He had the statues positioned carefully, Sarah in the center, the boys flanking her, recreating their protective triangle. Then he dismissed everyone except Owen. "Send for Lyra," Dmitri ordered, his voice hoarse from hours of silence. "The curse breaker, whatever it costs, get her here." Owen hesitated at the doorway. "Alpha, the council will demand to convene. They'll want answers about why you brought the condemned back. Then let them demand. I don't care what the council wants anymore." Dmitri's hands clenched into fists. "I condemned an innocent woman and my own children. If there's any chance, any possibility they can be saved, I'm taking it. Council approval be damned. They'll say you're compromised, that you're unfit to lead. They'd be right." Dmitri looked at his second with eyes that held no illusions anymore. "But I'm still alpha until someone challenges me for it. And until then, I'm using every resource this pack has to bring my family back. Send for Lyra, now." Owen left without another word, his footsteps echoing in the corridor. Dmitri waited until the sound faded completely, then slowly approached Sarah's statue. Up close, in the better light, he could see details he'd missed in the forest. The way her fingers curved protectively. The tension in her shoulders, as if she'd been bracing against some terrible force. The love and determination etched into every line of her stone face. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. You told me the truth and I didn't listen. You begged me to believe you and I chose them over you. Over our children." His hand found hers, stone fingers unmoving beneath his grip. "I don't know if you can hear me in there. I don't know if you're aware or if this is just stone-shaped like you. But if any part of you is still there, please hold on. Please. I'll fix this. I swear to you. I'll fix what I destroyed." The statue, of course, didn't respond. But the warmth beneath his palm remained, that impossible hint of life that gave him the first real hope he'd felt in 3 years. Behind him, the door opened. Dmitri turned to find not Owen, but the entire council filing in, their faces grim with judgment and barely contained anger. At their head walked Victor, the pack's head enforcer, a massive wolf with scars crossing his face and authority in every movement. Alpha Dimitri, Victor's voice was formal, cold. The council demands an explanation. You've brought a condemned traitor back into pack territory. You've risked our security and violated your own judgment for... He gestured dismissively at the statues. For stone. Dimitri rose slowly, drawing himself to his full height. He might be drowning in guilt, but he was still Alpha, still the largest and most dominant wolf in the territory. These are not just stone. They're my mate and my sons, and they may still be alive. Your mate was a traitor, another council member spat. The evidence was overwhelming. She conspired with Bloodfang, got 17 of our pack killed, and you rightfully condemned her. Now you want to undo justice because of sentiment? Justice? Dimitri's voice dropped to a growl. What if the evidence was wrong? What if she was telling the truth? Victor's expression hardened. Then you condemned an innocent woman, which means you're either a murderer or a fool, Alpha. Neither quality inspires confidence in your continued leadership. The words landed like physical blows, but Dimitri didn't flinch. You're right, I am a fool. And if she was innocent, I'm a murderer too. But that doesn't change what I'm going to do. I'm bringing in a curse breaker. I'm going to try to reverse the petrification. And if anyone in this room has a problem with that, challenge me now. Silence fell, heavy and dangerous. Several council members exchanged glances, clearly considering it. Victor's hand moved toward his weapon, then stopped. We'll convene a formal session, Victor said finally. You'll present your case. The council will vote on whether to allow this resurrection attempt. And Alpha? His smile was cold. You'd better pray they vote in your favor. Because if not, those statues go back to the forest where they belong. The council filed out, leaving Dimitri alone again with his frozen family. He returned to Sarah's side, his earlier determination hardening into something fiercer. More desperate. They want to send you back, he told her stone form, but I won't let them. Not this time. This time I choose you. I choose our sons. Even if it costs me everything. The warmth beneath his hand seemed to pulse, just once, as if in response. Dimitri chose to believe it was real, not imagination. He needed that hope, that fragile thread connecting him to the family he'd destroyed. Outside, the sun continued rising, indifferent to the drama of wolves and their cursed loves. But in the chamber, Dimitri made a promise that would reshape everything. He would bring them back, or die trying. And this time, no council vote, no political pressure, no fear of judgment would make him abandon the people who needed him most. The Alpha who'd chosen duty over love 3 years ago was dead. In his place stood a father who'd learned, far too late, what truly mattered. Lyra arrived at sunset, an ancient wolf with silver fur and eyes that had seen too many curses to be impressed by power or rank. She swept into the chamber like a storm, ignored Dimitri's greeting entirely, and went straight to the statues with the focused intensity of a predator stalking prey. For 20 minutes, she examined them in silence. Her hands hovered over the stone without touching, her eyes flickering with the telltale glow of magical sight. She walked circles around each figure, muttering in languages Dimitri didn't recognize, occasionally making sounds of surprise or concern. Finally, she stepped back and fixed Dimitri with a stare that could have stripped paint. Explain. Everything. How long have they been stone? Where exactly did you find them? And most importantly, her eyes narrowed dangerously. Why does the curse signature feel intentional? Dimitri explained. The banishment 3 years ago, the discovery in the forest, the impossible warmth. He left nothing out, including his own guilt and the possibility that Sarah had been innocent all along. Lyra listened without interruption, her expression growing more grave with each detail. When he finished, she turned back to the statues and sighed deeply. You fool. You absolute, catastrophic fool. I know. You don't know anything. Lyra's voice cut like a blade. These people aren't dead, Alpha. Their souls are trapped, suspended between one heartbeat and the next. The curse has preserved them perfectly. But this, she gestured at Sarah. This wasn't random petrification. This was controlled, intentional. She did this to herself. Dimitri's world tilted. What? Your mate used forbidden magic to trigger the curse in a specific way. Do you understand what that means? Lyra's eyes blazed. The Petrified Forest's curse is wild, chaotic. It takes victims randomly and violently, ripping their souls away as their bodies turn to stone. But she somehow controlled it. Chose the exact moment. Protected the children first, then herself. This level of precision requires knowledge of magic that should have died out centuries ago. But why? Why would she? To keep them alive, you idiot! Lyra's shout echoed in the chamber. She was alone in a cursed forest, probably gave birth to those twins with no help, raised them in conditions that should have killed them within days. She used forbidden magic to create this suspended state because it was the only way to survive long-term. The alternative was watching the curse take her children violently and randomly. Dimitri staggered, catching himself against the wall. Then she's been conscious all this time, trapped inside stone. Aware? Possibly, probably. The technique she used suggests she maintained some level of awareness to keep their souls tethered. Lyra's anger softened slightly into pity. Alpha, she's been experiencing every moment of the last 3 years as stone. Feeling, thinking, unable to move or speak or escape. The horror of it nearly drove Dimitri to his knees. 3 years of torture, 3 years of consciousness without release. He'd done that to her. His judgment, his pride, his cowardice had condemned her to a fate worse than any death. Can you free them? The question came out as a broken whisper. Yes and no. Lyra began pacing, her expression thoughtful and troubled. The curse can be reversed. Life force can be poured back into them, breaking the petrification and freeing their souls. But it requires massive amounts of energy and a direct connection to their essence. How much energy? I'll pay whatever. You don't understand. It requires life force, Alpha. Years of life, decades possibly. Someone has to give up their own existence to fuel the reversal. Lyra stopped pacing and met his eyes. And not just anyone. The curse responds to authority, to judgment. The one who condemned them must be the one to free them. You, Alpha Dimitri. Only you can break this curse, and it will cost you your life to do it. The words hung in the air between them. Dimitri processed them slowly, feeling their weight, their finality, his life for theirs, his existence traded for the family he'd destroyed. How long do I have to decide? That's the other problem. Lyra's expression turned grim. The curse has a threshold. After a certain point, the soul detaches completely and the body becomes just stone. True death. No recovery possible. I can't tell exactly when, but based on the magical degradation I'm sensing, she paused, calculating. 7 days, maybe 8. After that, even if you sacrifice yourself, it won't work. 7 days. Dimitri laughed, a broken, bitter sound. Then there's no decision to make. Start preparing the ritual. Alpha, you need to understand the cost. This won't be quick or easy. The life force transfer is agonizing. You'll feel yourself dying by degrees. Consciousness fading, existence unraveling. And there's no guarantee you'll survive long enough to free all 3 of them. You might only manage 1, maybe 2. Then I'll make sure it's them. The boys first, then Sarah. Lyra studied him for a long moment. You realize the pack will need a new alpha. The council will challenge this decision. And even if you succeed, your mate might refuse you. She has to accept the transfer, even in her stone state. If her soul rejects you, the ritual fails and you die for nothing. I know. Dimitri looked at Sarah's statue, at the fierce love frozen in stone. But I owe her this. I owe our sons this. Even if she never forgives me, even if my death accomplishes nothing but freeing her to hate me properly, it's still the only right choice I've made in 3 years. There's something else you should know. Lyra hesitated, clearly debating whether to share. The forbidden magic your mate used. It created a tear in the natural order. And tears like that attract things. Entities that feed on disturbances in reality. I'm sensing something circling, waiting. If we attempt this ritual, it might draw attention we can't handle. What kind of entities? The kind that hunt magical bloodlines for power. The kind that could consume your children and become unstoppable. Lyra's voice dropped. I don't have a name for it. The old texts just call it the Stone Devourer. It feeds on petrified souls growing stronger with each one. And your sons, children born from forbidden magic and alpha bloodlines? They'd be irresistible to it. Dmitri felt ice spreading through his veins. Then we do the ritual quickly, before this thing arrives. Or we don't do it at all. We could seal this chamber, leave them in peaceful suspension. They wouldn't be conscious anymore, but they'd be safe, protected. The alternative is risking everything on a ritual that might fail, might kill you, and might unleash an ancient predator on this entire territory. No! The word came out hard, final. I'm not leaving them in stone. I'm not condemning them to eternal imprisonment because I'm afraid of consequences. I already made that mistake once when I chose safety over trust. I won't make it again. Lyra sighed but nodded. Then we prepare. The ritual requires specific components. Moonstone dust, silver blessed under a dark moon, blood from your line, and something personal from each of them. Something that connects to their essence. I have nothing of theirs. I never knew the boys existed, and Sarah's belongings were destroyed after the banishment. Then we'll have to use the mate bond. It's still there, isn't it? Damaged, suppressed, but present? Dmitri felt for it. That thread he'd tried so hard to sever 3 years ago. It pulsed weakly in his chest, a connection he'd attempted to kill but never quite managed. Yes, it's there. Good, that's our anchor. I'll need 3 days to gather components and prepare the ritual space. During that time, you need to decide if you're truly willing to die for them. Because once we start, there's no stopping. No changing your mind halfway through. You commit completely or not at all. I've already decided. Lyra searched his face, then nodded slowly. I believe you. Moon, help us all. She moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, Alpha. If you do this, if you actually succeed in freeing them, your mate will wake up to 3 years of trauma and rage. She'll remember every moment as stone, every betrayal, every second of abandonment. And she'll blame you, rightfully, for all of it. Are you prepared to face that? Dmitri looked at Sarah's statue, at the children he'd never met, and felt something inside him finally break clean through. I'll face whatever I have to, as long as they're alive to hate me properly. The cursebreaker left without another word. Alone again, Dmitri approached his frozen family and allowed himself to fully feel the weight of what he'd learned. Sarah had suffered beyond imagination to protect their children. She'd used forbidden magic, risked her soul, endured 3 years of conscious petrification because he'd failed her so completely that survival itself had become an act of defiance. And in 7 days, he'd trade his life for theirs, hoping that death might finally balance the scales of his catastrophic judgment. The council convened the next morning in the Great Hall, and the chamber filled with tension thick enough to choke on. Dmitri stood before them, no longer wearing the symbols of his authority, already accepting that this position, this identity he'd clung to so desperately 3 years ago, meant nothing compared to what truly mattered. Victor rose to speak first, his voice carrying to every corner. Alpha Dmitri, this council has reviewed your actions and finds them deeply concerning. You've brought a condemned traitor back into our territory without consultation. You've announced your intention to use pack resources for a dangerous magical ritual, and you've admitted that your original judgment may have been flawed. We demand answers. You'll have them. Dmitri's voice was steady, empty of the pride that used to color every word. 3 years ago, I condemned my mate Sarah for treason based on evidence that seemed overwhelming. Letters in her handwriting, witness testimony. Perfect timing with an attack that killed 17 of our pack. I believed I was choosing pack security over personal feelings. I thought I was being a strong alpha. He paused, letting the words sink in. I was wrong, about everything. Murmurs rippled through the council. Victor's eyes narrowed. Wrong how? The evidence was reviewed thoroughly. Multiple wolves confirmed, I want that evidence re-examined. Every letter, every testimony, every detail. Because Lyra confirmed something I suspected the moment I found Sarah in that forest. She used controlled petrification, forbidden magic that requires knowledge and precision. She wasn't a traitor fumbling through conspiracy. She was skilled enough to manipulate one of the most dangerous curses in existence. Dmitri began pacing, his mind working through connections he should have seen 3 years ago. What if that skill extended to other areas? What if she was investigating Bloodfang the way she claimed, gathering proof of someone else's betrayal? What if the evidence against her was planted by the real traitor to silence her before she could expose them? The council erupted, some shouting support, others calling him delusional, most simply shocked by the implications. Victor slammed his hand on the table, demanding order. "These are serious accusations," the enforcer growled. "You're claiming one of us framed an innocent woman?" "I'm claiming I don't know what happened, but I'm going to find out." Dimitri's eyes swept the council. "And I'm going to reverse the curse on my mate and children. Lyra can do it, but it requires my life force. All of it, probably. So this is my final act as Alpha, using what power I have left to correct the worst mistake I ever made. You can't simply, I can, I will." Dimitri's Alpha command rolled through the room, making lesser wolves bare their throats involuntarily. This pack needs a new Alpha anyway, someone who hasn't proven himself a murderer and a coward. "Owen, you're my choice for succession. The council can confirm or deny, but that's my recommendation." Owen stood slowly from his seat, shock written across his face. "Alpha, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. And you know it." Dimitri's expression softened. "You're strong, loyal, and you question orders when they're wrong. You would have fought for Sarah 3 years ago if I'd let you. That's the kind of Alpha this pack needs." He turned back to the full council. "The ritual happens in 3 days. Any wolf who wants to witness can attend. Any wolf who wants to challenge my decision can fight me now." He spread his arms, offering himself. "I welcome it. I deserve whatever judgment you want to deliver." Silence. No one moved. Finally, an older council member named Iris spoke, her voice thoughtful. "Alpha, if what you're saying is true, if Lady Sarah was innocent, then we all share blame. We voted for her banishment. We accepted the evidence without deeper investigation. If you're trying to make amends, perhaps we should too." "How?" Dmitri asked. "Re-examine everything, the letters, the testimonies, the timeline. If there's a traitor among us, we find them. And if we find proof of your mate's innocence," Iris paused, choosing her words carefully, "then we acknowledge our failure and support whatever justice is appropriate." Dmitri wanted to reject the offer, to claim all the guilt for himself. But Owen caught his eye and shook his head slightly. Taking sole blame might feel right, but it wouldn't serve the truth. And truth was what Sarah deserved. 3 days, Dmitri agreed. "Find what you can. But the ritual happens regardless. My mind is made up." The council session dissolved into smaller groups, some already heading to the archives, others debating in heated whispers. Victor approached Dmitri directly, his expression unreadable. "If you're right about a traitor," the enforcer said quietly, "it means one of us directly caused 17 deaths and nearly caused 3 more. That wolf won't surrender quietly." "I know. Watch your back, Victor, and watch mine. I need to survive 3 more days. I'll assign guards, discreetly." Victor's scarred face showed something like respect. "For what it's worth, Alpha, this is the most honorable thing I've seen you do." The words should have brought comfort. Instead, they just highlighted how far Dmitri had fallen. That basic decency now seemed heroic. He left the great hall and returned to the chamber where his family waited in stone, already planning how to spend these final days. If he was going to die, he wanted to know his sons first, even if it was only through the traces they'd left behind.